How does Glasgow's collection of murals date back a lot further than you might think? And what's the connection to the Big Apple? Find out now in this episode of Astonishing Glasgow. If you've walked around Glasgow in the last few years, you can't fail to have noticed that almost every single gable end now has a mural to brighten things up. With amazing works by artists like Smug, who painted the fantastic portrait of St Mungo on the High Street in 2016, and then the world's most economical taxi by Rogue One, which has somehow survived being at street level in Mitchell Street since 2012, and even spawned an updated version at Heathrow Airport in London. And then, more recently, there have been works by O Panda and his unique big heads that have been popping up around the city. It's fair to say, Glasgow now looks like the gallery from an episode of Take Heart. You know the tune I want to use, but I can't use it because of copyright. Personally, I think the murals are great. But did you know that it's a Glasgow tradition that dates back to the 1970s and started as an idea pinched from New York City? In 1973, the director of the Scottish Arts Council, William Buchanan, became aware of a project to brighten up the Soho area of the Big Apple. Soho had suffered industrial decline, and it had gained the nickname Hell's 100 Acres. And so there were similarities with the economical decline and the social struggles that Glasgow was experiencing. Large geometrical designs in bright primary colours by artists Jason Crum along with Mel and Tanya Pizarski adorned the ends of buildings across Soho from 1970 onwards. These were public works, paid for by the City Walls Group, a non-profit organisation founded in 1966 to engage with communities through art and to uplift the area with bright colours. So in 1973, William Buchanan secured funding for the project from the Scottish Arts Council, and with the help of Tom McGrath, the founder of the Third Eye Centre, which is now the Centre for Contemporary Arts, they invited young artists to submit designs for murals to be painted on the city's Victorian tenements. In the end, 4 designs were chosen by 4 young artists for 4 sites around the city, and it is now my challenge to track them down. Not as easy as you think, as they were placed in the north, the south, the east and the west of Glasgow. I'm starting in the north of the city and I'm looking for Hex, the work of the artist Stan Bell. This mural was sited in Woodside, just off St George's Road, but as the area was being redeveloped in 1974, the building is no longer there. But exactly where was it? My first thought was that it was at the gable end facing New City Road. With the trees in the way, it was impossible to match any features, so I moved up St George's Road to the corner of Gladstone Street. This looked much more likely as the site of the mural. I think it's safe to say it was once right here. You can just make out the recently clad Woodside multi-storey flats in the background, as well as just visible on the left is Woodside Library, one of Glasgow's Carnegie libraries, which is now looking superb. Just across the road from the library, you can see remains of a painting on the gable end, but I think this may have been old advertising rather than remains of a mural. Unlike the original 4 artists, Stan Bell was commissioned to create further works around Glasgow. This is another of Stan Bell's works. It is listed as being in St George's Cross, but after lots of looking, I cannot match the exact spot. So if you know exactly where it was, please let me know in the comments section. Astonishingly, 50 years on, the third of Stan Bell's murals does still exist, but it's not in Woodside. Unfortunately for me, it's at the top of Garnet Hill. Almost worn to nothing is his submission to the Garnet Hill mural project from about 1978. Garnet Hill Park has been transformed since then, but Stan Bell's mural still clings on to the gable end of this building to this very day, which is more than can be said for the mural Celtic Knot by Jim Torrance, which is the next one I'm going to try and find. Celtic Knot was the design picked for the south side of the city, and of the 4 original designs, this one has been the most problematic for me to feature in this episode. This is the one and only picture I can locate in relation to this mural, and I'm not even sure if this is how the final mural appeared. This is listed as a design submission, and the location was listed as Annandale Street in Govan Hill. It was clear from visiting Annandale Street that there are no gable ends suitable for a mural here. I'm not one to give up, you should know that by now. So after a quick search of the area, at the other side of Govan Hill Park, I managed to find South Annandale Street. This gable end looks like a viable candidate, as the buildings in front of it now look to be a lot newer than 1979. My only concern are the industrial buildings to the right of the original picture, but the chimney placement above the mural does make it look like this is the exact location. Now again, if you have pictures or can confirm its location, please let me know in the comments section. And if you're enjoying this video while you're there, I'd be really grateful if you could hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really does help my channel grow. Now with Jim Torrance's Celtic Knot being a bit of a busted flush, it's time to head east. My mission has taken me to Denniston, an area that was due to be completely flattened in the name of progress in the 1970s. Thankfully, in 1975, the Reedvale Housing Association was set up to halt the demolition of the Victorian tenements and to modernise the sandstone blocks for community-owned housing. The mural in this area was to be the most futuristic of the 4. Clappa 2 by John McCall was sited on the gable end of Belfield Street. Sadly, it wasn't this gable end of Belfield Street, as 3 of the blocks were demolished shortly afterwards, but it would have stood on the ground now occupied by Reedvale Adventure Playground, who were gracious enough to allow me access to take these pictures. Clappa 2 was the mural's official name, but locals soon started to refer to it as the Frog. It was impossible to ignore, and not least because John McCall hired circus acts and fire breathers for its official unveiling to the public in 1974. With the cleaned up tenements and community gardens, Belfield Street looks a lot nicer than it did then, but I can't help thinking it would look even better with a massive psychedelic robot painted at the end of the block, especially one with a bird's eye potato waffle for a head.
Bird's eye potato waffles, that waffle ain't versatile.
The last of the original 4 murals I'm visiting in this episode was the first one to be painted and is possibly the most famous. But to tell its story, I need to head west. John Byrne is not only one of Scotland's most famous artists, but he was also a prolific writer, who amongst other works penned The Slab Boys and Tutti Frutti. On the 28th of August 1974, John Byrne arrived in Partick to begin work on Blue Sky Against Grey Sky on the gable end of a tenement which once stood right here where Crawford Path is now. I'm aware I have taken you all over Glasgow in this episode to show you things that are no longer there, and this is quite possibly the hardest one to picture ever even being on this location. Because of the trees and the new buildings, it's very hard to line up any of my shots with the original location pictures, but in this photo you can see the distinctive pillars either side of the bay windows on this tenement building. These flats are on Dumbarton Road, and the top of the tower on the Partick Methodist Church is just visible above the roofline in this shot, taken during the bin strikes of 1975. Blue Sky Against Grey Sky, being the first of the murals, also highlighted a problem with the whole project. These murals were conceived as public works to brighten and improve communities, but at no point were the communities actually consulted. Unlike recent murals around Glasgow, which feature historical figures, cultural events, or popular entertainers, the original murals were experimental pieces by young artists who took full advantage of the blank canvas without much consideration for those who had to live beside them. The community opposition to John Byrne's mural became evident when the night before its public unveiling, "Painter, put your brush away, the tiny Partick are here to stay," was daubed along its lower half. When painted over, it was soon replaced with "The painter's work was all in vain, the tiny Partick strike again." As it was, the whole project was in vain. John Byrne's mural only lasted 2 years before the building was demolished, and as shown in this episode of Astonishing Glasgow, none of the 4 original murals survive. There was continued funding right up until 1979, which makes me wonder if this work seen in my Taggart video was part of the scheme. By 1980, however, the writing was on the wall. Margaret Thatcher had withdrawn funding for the arts, and the project was forced to fold. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Astonishing Glasgow. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you would like to help me make more Astonishing Glasgow videos, you can grab some merch over on the Spreadshirt page, or donate directly using the Super Thanks button. These are the superstars who donated after the last episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can leave a comment below or head over to my Facebook and Instagram pages for loads more chat and content. Thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you next time in Astonishing Glasgow. Right, I've just made myself a plate of bird's eye potato waffles, crispy pancakes, alphabeti spaghetti, and turkey dinosaurs, so I'll see you later.